Right, page 461 people. And there's the long-term plan grouping of activities. So, do I have a mover?
Yes.
Martin. Oh, sorry, and seconded. Oh. Now it's up for discussion. So, are we all in tune with the recommendations? Are there, Tony?
Well, I suppose this issue going on parks and reserves, how they're funded. If they're a district asset, to me, and the district sets the criteria around how we look after them, they're prevented district funding. Otherwise, if they're locally funded, then what the service agreements are in respect to these things should be then the responsibility of the respective wards.
Page 461, Karen.
Yes, well, yeah. So that's something in my view, but I don't have an issue with the others, but it's.
So the plan is, if this goes through, that's acknowledged and that would be the first cab off the rank after we've done this 3 years.
That's correct. That's correct. Through the chair. So that's what when we did the workshop and we talked about, the group of activities. We talked about the fact that we want to come back straight away after the LTP and start the work on this. There's a lot of work to do to change this and to do the job properly, to do it well, and we want to make sure that we go through that process, especially around this, Councillor Fox was just saying, with the parks and reserves. That's a big piece of work to do that, so we want to make sure that we get that done properly, and we, with the resolution that we've got, we're taking on that commitment to make sure that we start that process as soon as possible after the LTP.
Public convenience.
Murray, then Martin.
Well, I just want to reiterate what Tony said, that say that we could be swallowed the rat on this one to get it through, to get it past, to do the LTP. We acknowledge exactly what Don was saying. Yeah.
So just at the top of page 465, talks about moving to locals and district funding would reduce the role community boards have in decision making for these activities. So, for instance, the Bay Reserve management plan, hypothetically, if the reserves didn't move to district funding, then would the full council be? I mean, full council obviously looks at those reserve management plans anyway, but would the community boards, how much less say would they have in
That's the consideration that we need to look at when we go through looking at this, because we need to understand and actually make a call on, how that would work.
Yeah.
And what involvement the community boards would still have.
So
what we're talking, there's two things we're talking about. We're talking about funding, but also about the involvement in the decision making. So I think that there's two aspects to it there. It's not all about the funding. It's about both things have to be thought about and work together.
Right, but those aspects would kind of have to be linked together.
They can be linked together, but there's no reason to say that if we went district, the community boards would be totally excluded. That's a decision that would need to be made through council and through this the planning that we're doing, that we're going to undertake.
They couldn't really, because community boards have a unique understanding of the reserves in their respective areas.
So this is the discussion for post when we've got an LTP and we're looking at that next bit of work, but it would be absolutely relevant and a good reason not to do it quickly.
Yeah. Okay, so any further discussion? There being none, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. So 473, Royal Village Point.
I'd like to move.
Move Terry, do I have a seconder? Seconded Murray. Sorry, Tony.
Any questions?
Martin?
So, I mean, I wasn't sure what the original, when this project was first started. Was there like an original budget that's considerably less than the 1 point
Yeah.
something million?
The original budget, which is on the back page, Martin, was 1,733,167. Unfortunately, prior to the work starting on site, we had no knowledge of a local archaeological remains, and Heritage New Zealand, who quite honestly surf our website for projects that are just about to or start, wrote to us saying we needed an archaeological authority, and works were to stop until we got there. So we met with Heritage New Zealand, negotiated what we could and could not do, and finished as of before Labour weekend last year all the works we could do, and we haven't got the authority by then. It is quite a process that takes a bit of time, and there's an appeal period after it as well. So I can quite honestly say that our relationship with HNZ is improved.
Really?
Yes, really.
Well, it probably needs to save us.
Why? So what does that find?
Well, we found nothing. Even the concrete ramp that comes down from the Coast Guard area, we had to do some trial holes there to make sure there was nothing, and there wasn't. So we finished that. That was fortunate. But we couldn't finish the final span of the bridge, which shows on the photographs that you've got a copy of. And we decided, as Labour weekend in October was looming, to do a workaround, put some concrete blocks in so the community could walk down to the pontoon at the end of the bridge and catch the ferry. And the additional funding that I'm a bit embarrassed to ask for here is to install the final span of the bridge, which is actually on site and has been paid for, to take the concrete blocks away and finish it, and we would, as you've seen here, have an archaeologist on site just to make sure we don't, how can I put it, upset the area. Heritage New Zealand are an entity who operate under an Act of Parliament, and as I went to their offices, I got invited round to meet all the archaeologists, and the last person I met was their lawyer, who is incumbent in their offices. So they are a power to be reckoned with, and we need to give them all the respect that they're entitled to.
Have we reacquainted ourselves with the legislative provision of our role as an authority?
Yes.
Versus their stepping in, because the Archaeological Association is not a government department. It's quite separate from New Zealand Heritage Trust. So I'd be quite interested to make sure that we understand the role and functions of these people, and when and how they're invited into being involved in a project. Anyway, I'm just saying that. I think it's something we need to reacquaint ourselves.
I'll take your point. I'm a little bit, with respect, past that.
Yes,
We have all the people involved in projects now here are very aware of Heritage New Zealand, and I can say that their knowledge of the Coromandel, and in particular Mercury Bay, is scant at best. Now, I said, for a reaction, I said to the lady who operates them, okay, so I have a house in Mercury Bay. I dig a large hole to put a tree in, and I find charcoal, and I find pippy or mussel shells in that hole. Should I be telling you? She said, yes, you should.
No, you don't.
Oh, God, it's just a hole on the ground where the kids have barbecues.
So, I think we've moved on from where we've been.
Terry?
Yeah, I just made from Martin's sake too, that when we started this job, we had a piling company that came in and some estimates for costings for the job. And then the America's Cup came along, so they pulled the pin in their way. And these are quite specialised businesses, so we had to go and reprice everything.
Yeah.
So the price did accelerate quite extensively. So this really is, and what the archaeologists or the New Zealand Heritage just added, we just want to complete this project.
John?
That $256,000, 731, that's not totally attributable all to Heritage New Zealand's.
No, it's not.
So
It's John, it's bringing the contractor back to site,
yeah,
removing what is there now.
yeah. But was that all as a result of,
Yes, it is.
of the Heritage New Zealand?
There's a certain amount of what I would only describe as aborted work here. In other words, it has no real value, but it's, as I said, we have the last span of the bridge and all the handrails on site, close by.
Yeah, got that.
Okay.
I understand that. That $256,000 extra money that you want to get from the harvest activity, is that money actually in that activity at the moment?
I believe so, yes.
Well,
I believe so. It's out of the power limit.
It's out of cycle budget.
it is out of cycle.
Yeah.
Yeah. You see, to me, this is another classic of. The thing is usable at the moment as it is. It's not pretty, but it's usable. It's something that should be pushed out, not taken as an outside budget matter, but maybe put it into the LTP for consideration next time around, rather than actually trying to get $256,000 out of cycle money. I would prefer to wait until it's due. It's the same as went with Valley and any other project that runs out of cost. I believe we should actually hold that. It's finished. I mean, we're not going to lose anything.
We wouldn't do this until after Easter next year.
Sorry, what was that?
We wouldn't complete this work until that. We haven't got enough time between now and, say, Labour weekend, in other words, when tourists come to the district to complete the work. So we would not complete this until after, I think, Good Friday is the 2nd of April.
So, but it will still be outside of budget money, wouldn't it?
Yes.
So why are we doing the resolution now instead of then?
Just to get it approved, to be honest with you. This has been, for this cost were put together in May, earlier this year, and the intention is to, we were hoping to get it onto the council agenda before now, but it hasn't arrived. I didn't get into it. So we're just to do.
So we're assuming the costs aren't going to change between now and April of next year?
No, they won't. I guarantee it.
Because I don't want to see any more money come back from Waterloo Point.
No, this is
Any
getting
more
expensive.
requests over Waterloo Point.
And I just don't think it's all their fault, it's just that.
It's been a jolly night.
I mean, it is nice down there, it's a great facility, blah, 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 but it does cost a lot of money, and it's like $256,000. I say, hey, let's leave it as this, let's complete it when we can actually program the money in properly. It's a lot of money.
I have to say, all of our coastal facilities are the most used facilities in our district.
It is.
They are just absolutely sought after, and people are there all the time, all year round, and they love it.
And what's there now is a big improvement on what was there previously.
Yeah.
So it is well used.
Okay, well, we had a move and we have a second, very much as I hate it, because it's an out of cycle budget. I'm going to say, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, You want your thanks recorded?
Yeah.
Thank you, Andrew, for persevering in what has been, I know, a very, very trying project.
Yeah, thanks, mate.
Very
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Right, Red Escape Park. Another one of the discussion?
The whole second.
Yeah, so this is just a modification, makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Great. Look, I mean, big ups to the skate park people in Mercury Bay who raised such a good amount towards this project. So is there any discussion? There be none?
I thought there was some discussion around the wording.
Around who?
The wording?
No, yeah, it was raised earlier on, there's, the project cost is, what was it, $610,000. We have a contingency fee there, taking up to 734. Maybe we can grab that 100,000 and put in the books, bullet points or something, but it's fine. Don't worry about it.
Excellent.
Okay. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Right. We're now on to the Chief Executive Report, page 477.
Your Worship, just to run through a few issues here. With regards to the financial report, we obviously had our annual plan, which we've done 2 substantial budget revisions on during the year, one in October last year and one in March. The good thing about now that we're getting to the annual report time, I've presented the annual report figures. They're unaudited figures. However, we're 98% of the way there now, so it's just to give you an early heads up on what the annual report will be showing. The key from our perspective is, compared to the annual plan, we're showing a budgeted surplus of 10.577 million compared to 9.9 million we budgeted for, so the overall outcome against annual plan has been okay.
Yeah.
It's been good. However, the operating budgets are the key sort of criteria that I look at in terms of how we've been going. And compared to the 2 major budget reviews that we did this year, the pleasing thing from my perspective is we've come in $2 million under where we forecast in March, which was the COVID budget that we reforecast. So it's very pleasing to see that we've come in under. There have been some cost increases, particularly solid waste. COVID affected the solid waste area very badly. However, we also recovered a few extra costs in solid waste as well, which netted off, so not a major disaster, but I would say compared to many local authorities, having experienced COVID this year, we've come out reasonably well, which is why I feel sort of very positive about where we've been this year. We've had our challenges. But what it actually means in reality is that we're about $2.5 million better off in terms of our borrowings than we thought we would be at the end of this year, despite the journey that we've been on. And so it creates a better starting position for us moving into the current financial year that we're in. So I'm very pleased with that. So other than that, we've got a new report format because I promised at this time that we would start reporting our finances in a different way. So at the end of this council meeting, we're going to be bringing a new report format to you. Donna and Hayden are going to be working through that with you just to see if what we're suggesting is going to be an easier, more understandable way of receiving the financial updates. So we're looking forward to that. In other matters, well, of course, COVID's been one thing this year, which has been utter chaos, but it seems as though everybody else is throwing chaos our way. So we've got the 3 waters reform that we're involved with heavily, and there's been an awful lot of work going into that 3 waters reform stuff. Again, it's a major change being thrust in local government's direction, so we're staying very close to it. We're working through the funding agreement at the moment, and by the end of September, we're required to have our funding agreement signed off. Staff will keep you appraised as to where we get to in that regard. Sugarloaf is progressing well. We have the company set up and we have 2 directors on the board. Things are progressing. The most disappointing thing about the last month or so was we found out that we wouldn't be part of the fast consenting process, which was a ministerial decision. So we're working through that behind the scenes as a company and as a council to see if we can amend that decision or do something to speed the process up, but actually that's one of the more disappointing elements of PGF is consenting the project on the basis of a shovel-ready project, thinking that we were going to get a fast consent, and they've changed that.
And look, there's no, I just want to butt in here and say there's absolutely no rationale for what is an existing facility that is desperate for the maintenance and upgrade, and then they want it to go through a fully notified process. It's called dumb and dumber. Anyway. Sorry.
I mean, the key advantage is that fortunately we are funding this activity, so there are no ratepayer funds going into Sugarloaf, as we know, we've celebrated that, which is good.
So the dredging, so just where are they going to go? Is there concerns about what they're going to do with the material? There was discussion about there could be an issue over that.
No.
Where they're going to put it into the sea?
No. Further explanation.
Possibly.
No, I just read in the thing and sort of concerned about that.
The advice from the company who are progressing the consent is that they don't believe there are any major consent issues to be concerned about, which is why it was approved as a shovel-ready project.
You've got a couple of screaming memes up there.
Very loud.
So moving right along in terms of the Thames spatial planning exercise, getting Thames back into Thames and the Thames South area back into a district plan that it requires. It's 30 years behind minimum, so we've been doing an awful lot of work in the Thames spatial planning area. We've run some workshops and they've all been very successful, very positive workshops, and we've come a long way. So that work is progressing, and council will be receiving a report at the October meeting to provide further briefing on the spatial planning exercise, very important for the future of Thames South as well as the district. And we also, sorry.
On that basis, could we ask Sleepy to come here instead?
No, sadly, when you look at the Auckland Hamilton corridor, most of the investments that we're seeing now were made probably 30 to 35 years ago on the basis that the Auckland Hamilton corridor was going to happen. And this is why I say, and I've always said, that if we don't get our district plan right today, we will pay for it in over the next 30 years. And that's always the problem, is if we don't have a 30-year horizon for our district planning, the investments that people make for the future are not made because there is no certainty of outcome. And that is why we're seeing a decline in Thames in particular, because no one has actually thought to do the planning to allow those early investments by those people that land bank, knowing that they will want to do things in the future. So this is all about correcting that deficiency in our district planning over the last 30 years. And it's, we're getting somewhere. But again, if we'd done it 30 years ago, we certainly wouldn't have had the compliance costs that we face today in doing that planning. So, that's okay, we're catching up and we're doing a reasonable job, and the workshops have been positive, so I'm very pleased with that. And similarly with the transport investment workshops, we're trying to use our connected journeys portfolio, let's call it, working with Rationale, who are heavily involved in NZTA planning anyway. Ed Guy, who runs Rationale, he's on the infrastructure council as well, so that helps in terms of getting us a good in there. But we're running the rules of, I shouldn't call it NZTA now, Kotahi. We're running their own rules with a fine-tooth comb to see how we can use those rules to get our own improved transport infrastructure, both to this district, out of this district and around this district. And so we've run a series of workshops to really push the issue forward. It was interesting to see last week there was an article on 7 Sharp, I think it was, and it was only a day or so after we held the workshop on the Eastern Waikato with the mayors and chief executives of the Eastern Waikato to really push the fact that the roads are in an appalling state in the Eastern Waikato. And it was noted on that article on 7 Sharp that over the last 5 years, the trucking industry has had a 50% increase in its maintenance costs for its fleet as a result of road damage. That's generally across New Zealand, but it was backed up by VTNZ, who also said in the last 12 months alone, they've carried out over 1 million service checks, and by far the two worst districts in New Zealand are Northland and Waikato. So we are right when we drive along the road and say, my God, this road feels rubbish to drive on, because it is true, they are quite rubbish to drive on. And they are seriously in need of maintenance from a state highway perspective. So that's what the Transport Investment Workshops are all about. It's about building a case, both perception-wise, but more importantly, with a factual base to it, that we can go to the regional land transport committees, we can go to NZTA, and we can go to ministers armed with the factual information to say something needs to be done. Because as things stand at the moment, most of the investment is being sucked into the Auckland-Hamilton corridor, into south of Hamilton, into such as the Peacocks development, which is all good stuff, it's all great, it should be applauded, it's New Zealand Inc., it's fantastic. However, we cannot afford to allow the provinces to go out of business while we fund those from a national perspective. So that's basically where I would sort of probably finish this series report in terms of we're doing that good work, and we're pleased that we're making progress on many of these historic 50-year-old sort of 30-year-old problems that we need to change.
Can I just add on to that last one about the transport, then I'll come to you, Terry, but the Joint Council Iwi mayors, chiefs and executives from the three councils, and along with David Hartley, as colleague Mary Tuffwood. My apologies to you, Tony, because I hadn't been awake or alert to the meeting coming up as it was. And this was an initiative that was pulled together by Rob, and it was absolutely brilliant. And so this is a part of that shadow group that's the YLPR Coromandel Catchment Authority of Tree Settlement. The suggestion from David for a name was Te Tala Utifai, which means the barb of the stingray. And of course, we've got this wonderful mural behind us, which I absolutely adore. Hugely successful meeting, really successful meeting. Everybody felt quite energised. So it'll be Tony that'll be the beneficiary of that, because as we look up the landing place for what we can put into the regional land transport plan, as a collective group, Te Tala Utifai, that's the eastern sub-region of the Waikato, then it'll become quite clear that there are two parts that need to be funded, not just the expressway, but also State Highway 2 and subsets. So that's where that 50% of an increase in cost to truckies comes in, because it's our State Highway 2 that they come down, and that's where a lot of the problem is. We will then be in a much better space for them to say, hey, don't forget us over here, just because we're getting all the lobbying done over on the other side of the Papakoi Ranges. So, Tony, sorry that you went there, my apologies for that, but that was just a really energising one, and David came away from that meeting saying, wow, that was good. So they're really energised by this big co-governance arrangement that we're developing.
And because in the morning before that, when we had the one here, like we had leeches talking to the cyclists, and it was a really good meeting as well, and we were very
yeah, Jerry.
Oh, just going back to the solid waste, when we started through the COVID, the 1s and 2s plastics were recycled, the rest were chucked in the bin. Is there a move to go back to keeping the 3s to 7s, or is this still going to go in the landfill?
No, that will be a national direction, probably from until there's any industry that can actually look at 3s to 7s. There actually is no industry that can look at 3s to 7s, so which is why most local authorities now don't collect them.
So where's the pressure going on those who produce 3 to 7s to use 1s and 2s?
Again, that's a Wellington issue. That's where that should be a ministerial portfolio to actually work through what is the recycling industry going to be in the future in New Zealand, because we need to show some national direction rather than leaving it up to local government to try and pick up the tab.
People are producing more and more waste.
I mean, we've been talking about it in the solid waste industry for probably 30 years now. There's been many sector groups that have advocated for bottle recycling, 5 cents, like they do in South Australia and in many parts of the world, that we should have product stewardship, that those that create it should pay for it, storage collection, all of that stuff. It's been spoken ad nauseum, but at the end of the day, Wellington has never put in place any legislation on that industry to make it happen. And that really is, sadly, the only way to make that happen in New Zealand, is to create a truly functioning product stewardship type of legislative basis.
Do what yours are disclosing.
Can I ask a couple of questions? It looks on page 481, it says the very first column, there's rates, revenue, and it says it's favourable year to date with revenue. Are we not having problems with people paying their rates?
No.
That's
going
all happening. I wondered. So it's just the operating cost.
We've been remarkably fortunate, I think, through COVID in the district. We have come off relatively unscathed compared to many of the local authorities. So, we're very fortunate.
Another question I have on page, must be 492 and 493. In the following page, it has got the yellow dot. That doesn't seem to fit in with the performance measures. They seem to have green, red and blue, but we've got green and yellow. So what's the yellow mean?
The yellow means that it's just sort of wavering off track. So,
is there a thing where it says that that's what it is? Because I couldn't see where yellow is.
No,
sorry, no, the key seems to have dropped off that particular 2 pages. Normally it would have a key.
No, I just
it would
wanted
have,
to know a key, please, so I wasn't sure.
it would have red, amber, green. So red would mean that the project's completely fallen off the radar or it's not going to get delivered. Amber means that it's strayed off the LTP path or the annual path, and green means that
You can say the next report will be in a different format.
yes, we're going to be working through that at the council meeting.
Yeah, I sort of follow it, but I don't get the fuzzies reading it.
No, look, I think that's fair comment.
Yeah.
This term, particularly where we've had the challenges around our annual plan and they've basically been well canvassed, but I think that issue highlighted problems with the way that this report works. Had we been closer with our annual plan and budgetary process, and had we had figures that matched what we were trying to achieve, it would have worked. But because we have a report here that combines both real cash operational expenditure and non-cash items such as vested assets and depreciations and things like that, it just skews the picture when we're out of kilter with budgets, which was the importance of that, was to do the rebudgeting exercises throughout the year, which is what we did, so that we could actually present better reports. And so that's why we're bringing another report, because it needs to change.
And so we're having a session after the council on how you want to see that structured. So Donna's pulled together on a paper for that. So I'm happy to move the CEO's report. Do I have a second? Tony, any further discussion?
No, cool.
Very good, thank you. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. So now we're on 5.1, Grant Wesley Keith Park. Do I have a mover? Yes. Robin? Do I have a seconder? Martin? Any discussion? I think we should just acknowledge
Yes, so do I.
Backward Britain team at the airfield, headed by Jeff Furkett, and just say what an outstanding job, which it just blew my mind that they actually achieved it in the first instance, and the hurricane is in the air, folks.
It's, yeah,
Unbelievable.
and I've just had universal, young, old, middle, same calculators at our entrance, and the whole Sakif, and once we've got another statue of Sakif out there, it'll make everything make much more sense, and I think it's a really crucial part of this town. It's been fantastic.
I just don't know why they didn't put in that top pivot.
I think they were wanting to be really clear not to have the challenges with NZTA.
That's my opinion, just.
Martin.
Yeah, and so within, I would say it was less than 60 seconds of the plane getting up onto the support, the first selfies were being taken. So I suspect that plane will get photographed more than the LNP bottle environment.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's absolutely awesome. And we had the top brass of the New Zealand Air Force in attendance. So, what do they call the Air Vice Commodore or something?
And also Wing Commander from the UK, who's
From
the,
the UK.
who's
And in time,
Yes.
who's
time to come, you might be able to also Zoom, like screen to Great Britain, to people over in Great Britain.
And Malta, like this, he didn't just stay in the top here.
The most influential man in the second world war.
Absolutely.
Down there and out there.
Yeah.
Without question.
Yeah.
A wonderful, wonderful human.
So I think at the same time, I think somebody should be capturing all the domain names for New Zealand, Thames' Battle of Britain. All of that type of thing.
You will mention that. Yeah.
So it needs to become part of a big,
Well, it's
much
international.
bigger.
They said that their current website, 60% of the traffic is international at this point in time.
Overseas people know more about this than we do.
Yeah.
That's the tragic thing.
Well, let's turn it into a big plus for
Only been in a few last few years to deliver comments to keep going.
Sorry, Tim, I just note the rent of $1 departure for the rent charge. Is it because it's, I thought it's the whole working group? It just seems to be odd that we charge $350 anyway.
Where are you?
I can answer that one. It's generally because it's a lease is often for, like a pony club or something like that, and this lease is actually for a circle underneath the static display. And there were conversations with the group along those lines, so that is a departure from the policy. But that's the logic.
Yeah, I understand it. I just don't. But I like the $350 for a group that just put a little thing in the ground.
Okay, moving right along here.
So the only other thing I would say about it is that I'm not suggesting that it's the perfect model to follow, but, and they did do it a little bit unconventionally as far as ordering a plane before they got permission, and in fact before they had the money. But yeah, I think it was a determined group of people who just went for it and made it happen. And
I think they should be in local relations.
What?
Nothing, just a sideline.
That's why I said that, the fact that they actually achieved it blew my mind, because.
Well, nominations for things that are open at this point in time.
I think it's great, so, big ups to them. So all those in favour, press aye. Against, carried. And what a tribute to Keith, as you said, Tony, one of the single most influential people of the world. Unbelievable.
Within 48 hours, Battle of Britain.
Yeah.
So I just think there's an opportunity for it to go bigger than them.
Oh, so do I.
Biggest thing achieved by a country mile.
Yeah.
That is the biggest thing on the peninsula by a country mile.
Yeah.
That is how significant this human is.
Yeah.
It's the most impressive thing in this district. There's one thing.
Okay, right, we'll go to 6.1, Kopu Marine Servicing Precinct Grant Funding Acceptance. 504.
Okay. Yeah, so this is exciting times again, which is good. So the report was written a couple of weeks ago, so things have been moving a little bit. I guess want to highlight that we're going to be coming back, there will be another report back in December to the board, to the council on confirming the lockdown scope of the project before we go into implementation. So there'll be another report coming back. I guess at this point, I just received the agreement too from MBIE yesterday. So there might be a recommendation change on that report here, which basically either council agrees to allocate a role to approve the agreement outside of this, because we hadn't had it until yesterday. The agreement, similar to Sugar Loaf, so it's probably no surprises, but it just talks about there's some procurement kind of requirements there around local procurement procurement for Māori people, and priority around procuring staff, women staff particularly as well, which is interesting. There is also a 12-month time frame on signing the agreement. So we are having a meeting with NBIE tomorrow just to iron that out, because some of the timing of construction is dependent on some of the larger firms that can build the floating pontoons which are proposed. So we're having a negotiation with NBIE on that. So are there any questions? Do you want me to run through the project a little bit more, or?
Yeah, I did think that the time seemed ambitious.
Yes.
So do we have to spend that money within a certain?
Yeah, so at the moment the draft is for 12 months to start construction.
Right.
So we are discussing with NBIE tomorrow about that. And I think there will be some flexibility. They've got to be realistic. What we really need is, if the council decides to agree to the grant, we need to draw down some of the initial funding to keep the project in the planning stage, keep the design happening.
Is regional council on board?
Yeah, we're in quite a bit of conversation with regional council, the operations staff at this point, around just how practical it is to build down by the stop back there. And there's been some really good dialogue with them. They're actually putting a hand up to offer some of the materials that they've actually stored around Kopu, so rock riprap, things like that, to help the cost efficiencies there, which is really good.
Yeah.
They also know they've been operating in that area and how to build stop banks and the sloppy material that's around there. So they've been trialling and erroring lots of construction methodology. So we're going to be drawing on them a lot around that, and so they're well involved.
The regional council will use the facility as well over the.
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
So I see there's no boat lifter. It's just all slipway.
Yeah. So the slipway is one of the key components. So at the moment it's just rock riprap. It's no traction, so there will be an improvement to that slipway. The key component basically is in-water servicing, so significant amount of investment in in-water servicing, and that's almost basically doubling what potential economic and business opportunities there are there. So you've got local boat builders and the likes of Kopu Engineering can service boats in water. The likes of the muscle barges that need to be serviced once a year, but if there's maintenance and things like that, they can come up, park up, not get hauled out, do their thing, and the turnover is much higher. The other thing as well is, a lot of boats, it's about 1,000 operating what they call brown or dirty boats in that industry that are going elsewhere. So, they'll go to Whangarei or Auckland or Tauranga to do their servicing because Coromandel's tidal. And there's actually quite a big opportunity there at Kopu to provide an all-tide access for servicing.
So will they have to increase the channel? Will they have to do the channel width?
At this stage, no. They're looking at making sure there's enough draft. The barges don't have a huge draft, which is good. The way that the design is, the floating pontoons are out far enough at this point that you service the largest boats in the fleet at the moment. So that's really good. There is a bit of a pinch point up the harbour mouth a bit more. I think it's 1.2 or so metres of draft, which can still allow barges. We've got McCullum's. They take it to Britsky Line and get aggregate from Kopu already, so they can get across into the harbour, into the Waihau. But it's just a tide timing issue. Yeah.
Excellent, okay. No further comment, then I'll put the resolution.
I'm going for an extra clause, like the question I think was asked.
Oh, about getting the C.
Have to approve the
CEO.
Yeah.
Is it twice CEO or is it CEO and mayor or is it not?
I guess CEO mayor would be.
Do you want Rob and I to be, what is it, signatories to any modification agreement?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Yeah.
Okay. So the fourth bullet point, the mayor and CE to approve any final changes or to?
And that'd be around the timing and things like that.
Yeah, so the timing has to be agreed.
If it's a year to start, then I'm sure we can start.
Yeah,
We'll
we
work
can.
through any of the details, even if it's just a bit of concrete as a route.
So how are you reading it? Consequential amendments or changes?
So you could just change, number 2, which just says accepts the grant and associated grant conditions subject to signing off by the mayor and CEO.
And approves the.
And approves.
Yeah.
Okay,
So Ross, I know there's a time limit at start. Is there a sunset clause in it to?
Yeah, funnily enough, they had 14 months after starting in 12 months, finishing in 14 months. But that's it. So they probably haven't worked out, and that's why there's a conversation to be had with them. Yeah, and it's a draft, so that they're very open to discussion, so, yeah.
Yeah. So with that amendment and approves mayor and CEO to sign with that amendment, the mover and seconder happy with that? Oh, seconded. Sorry.
I'll move.
Sally moved, like seconder, Martin. Okay, all those in favour, press aye. Against, carried. Thank you.
This is the second most important thing that's happened. You know, this is really cool for us.
Yeah.
So that's what it means internationally.
Oh, that's right, sure. That's our telephone.
What are members' reports? So we will go to you, Kerry.
Yes, so the only one I've got really is making a roll around the district plan. Where are we with the district plan and the appeals?
Oh, good question. As far as I heard, we still have one unresolved.
Oh, that is about 4 unresolved. I'm not, so there's just a couple that we're working through, but it is an ever decreasing list. If you want an update, I'm more than happy to find that out and put it in the councillor's weekly update.
And do we know a number yet? What was it?
No, I couldn't tell you.
You're going to frighten me, aren't you?
Well, I would, I'm sure, if I can't.
So let's just leave it at that, but Steve will put something together and pop it into the weekly update, if that's all right?
We would like that.
Yeah, okay.
All I know is that we've had information reports over the year and we're under budget. Whatever that budget is, I don't know exactly.
So the plan is operative in some areas and not in others, is that I understand? The district plan?
No, what we have is two plans.
Yeah.
And you have a previously operative plan, but the minute you notify a new plan, you then have to compare one with the other and make a decision based on both. And once we get through the appeals process, it then becomes one operative plan.
So you're working with 2 at the moment?
Yes.
John, good.
Pretty much all the standard council ratepayer stuff up in Coromandel. The only comment I would make is that I've had to approach staff about any issue that we're getting receptive and helpful. And, possibly then have a substantial life in Coromandel.
I've had a few outings and it's been really lovely, and I felt quite privileged to be a part of the audience for the Circuit Park statue unveiling blessing on Sunday morning. And that was a really lovely thing to be a part of for all of the reasons that we talked about before. The other thing that's just been on my mind in terms of the reserves and reserve management and trees and all the things that we love. There were a number of instances in that report that we had before, number 2.7, about tree vandalism in places where trees are known to be vandalised. And I know that we've recently had that issue in the Pines, and there's been stuff in the media about how we've responded to that. And I wondered if at some point we could have a conversation as a council about our various opinions and what our policies are in terms of trees being vandalised, and to prosecute or not to prosecute. I know that we all have our own opinions, and I know that we all have our own ideas about what should happen, and I would like to have a conversation as a council about that. I'm going to put that out there.
Right. Okay.
Well, presumably we have a policy about what we do when trees are vandalised, or if we don't, could we please?
It'll come under our regulatory.
Yeah.
I've got right in the room if you want to talk about.
Well, I could do it now.
So yeah, of course, crossing.
Yeah.
Afterwards.
Lovely.
That always works under, rapid response modeling. Trying to fix the issue, get the gaming plans.
Yeah, so perhaps if you just have a conversation with Brian,
Always a pleasure.
see how you feel about how things are being handled at the moment. So recently had a big case over in Younger,
Yes.
and I thought that the fine was excessive, given that the remedial work at the same time.
No fine.
No fun, yes.
No fine. No fine.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was
There was
4,000.
That's what they
remediation,
pay.
so the cost
That's
to
what the price
replace
is,
the trees
no fine.
and to look after them until they are grown
Yes.
is met by the alleged perpetrator. No fine.
Yeah.
Right.
They've gone to court, they've probably got a smack on the hand
Yeah.
and a $200 fine, and we'd have no trees. So the way Alan, I think, negotiated that
Yes.
was we get the job done, with a bit of trees,
Yeah.
and all parties are happy.
Yeah, I just noticed that it was there were at least 3 reserves in that reserve management.
Not you don't catch the perpetrator. We've got heavy.
Where did that 40,000 come from?
That's to go and buy the trees, go and prepare the ground, go and get them put in, go and get
Let's
the
have
water,
that
go and get them maintained, go and get
This is what I was asking.
Okay,
We could have a discussion. Thank you.
And not go for.
Well, later on, I have a chat with Brian. Sally, was there anything else, Robert? Okay, thanks. Sally.
Just generally really enjoying the amount of activity and action, as I said earlier, around policy stuff, and also to have those different users of our state highway and our own roads, I think is really progressive. Waikato Civil Defence and Emergency Management Group Work Committee on Monday the 7th of September, I represented you people. Obviously, I think COVID being a national and international crisis and being a national emergency and uncertainty of when it will be over and etc. has caused quite a few issues, but I think it's generally gone really well. There has been an overspend region-wide of during that time of $345,000 that will be recovered regionally by a targeted rate on the Waikato regional rates, which for each property is $1.65. So just so you know that, but I just thought you were always interested in money, so I was to tell you that. Well, that's what I was saying, but it's just like, I just wanted you to know that that's how that money was distributed. And crucially, the controller sounds, when people say the controller, I sort of go back to Thomas the Tank Engine, but anyway, the controller has the power to decide where the money was spent, and so I was very pleased it was decided it was regional and not diverted back to us. That's the point I'm trying to make. And we've still got issues around, how working with FENS about the plan to turn the sirens off in December. So that's all work in progress, and I will keep you up to date when I know anything more.
Appreciate that. Gary.
Yes, I suppose what triggered me to think in very broad terms of legal process is when I looked at the Tairua skate park and discovered to my horror how long it had been going on for. Now, there's always the right and the legal right to challenge, and I've been involved in that process. But when matters are just dragged out for fear of someone taking it on, the council has an obligation to stand up in the end. If it meets legal requirements and it's wanted by the community, these are things that councils have an obligation to support. And all I can say is I hung my head and could not believe how that has been taking 30 years, and that's why I said, when we're going to get on with it. I think Mary helpfully told me that we need something back positive from the community board, and then we look at it, but it just seems to me we must have the legal process not scare us, but help us. And that's my comment I'd like to make.
Thank you, Gary. Martin.
Right, so on Sunday I was with Councillor Sinclair out at the unveiling of the hurricane out at the Siki Park Memorial Airfield, and then we laid a wreath at the outside the Civic Centre. and then there was a flyby of a Spitfire and a World War One biplane, which was the same model brand that Saki Park flew, and it was really good. There was a quantity of people there. Apparently there was 99, so we were okay as far as.
There were 99 anything.
Yeah, we've all been safe. Sally and I went to the Thames Rotary Club. There was a speaker from Coromandel, a very interesting person who created a educational app, which due to COVID and schools doing lots of remote learning, it's now got 15 to 20 million users in 175 countries in the world, and that's just, this guy living up in Coromandel doing it. So yeah, that's possibly another person who might be a local hero.
I think he's heroing himself.
Yeah, I mean, he's making money. And also spoke at the unveiling of artwork by Dave McCracken down on the corner of Pollen and Mary Street, and that has provoked a lot of people talking. There's people that love it, there's people that hate it, and there's everyone in between. But the main thing I think at the moment is that people in Thames are really getting a sense of stuff happening, playing the artwork, created by, and yeah, which is good. And again, there's people that are, I looked at headquarters down there's taking up 1.5 car parks, but you always get those people.
Can I just say, Martin, and apparently on the Creative Vibe, we have achieved a positive comment on the Thames Grapevine.
No!
Yes. We
Oh my gosh! Not a positive comment on Facebook.
Champagne all round. And yes, and I also attended the Transport Investment Workshop that Rob mentioned in his report. And yeah, what was great about that was there was logging people, there was a freight courier company, there was tourist operators, there were people doing cycle tours and things. And yeah, it was just really good to be in a room with a whole lot of different people, and there was a lot of good networking that was going on around that. And found out that there was 3 people from Leach Brothers, and they said that because of that bridge by the golf course, they, to move a certain weight across there, they have to have longer multiple axle trailer units, and that really affects their operation. So that was interesting to get those sort of feedback from people in the industry. And the last thing, notice that when you move from Hauraki District into Thames District, you see the nice Hauraki District sign saying welcome to Hauraki with the LMP bottle and cyclists and things, but we don't seem to have welcome to TCDC signs.
We've been working on that for 4 years.
Excellent. So we can look forward to seeing the designs.
On Zoom, I'd be able to give you, or Laura would be able to give you an update as to exactly where we're at. But it's, as far as I'm concerned, I think it's in the LGP discussion as to whether we really want to continue it as a project. So, but we have locations, I think we've been talking about 4 locations with MZTA.
Yeah, because I mean, there'd only really be, I guess, Toku,
Hikatai.
Tower, just north of Spirit Tower.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's 3.
And I'm just that sort of ties in with the whole world. There'll be hopefully a whole lot of people visiting here. So it's good to say right now on TCDC's area.
There was one in Kopu on Queen Street, and it was an unmitigated disaster. You remember that one?
It was a huge thing.
No?
That was a huge thing. Heritage just thinks small thing. I don't even know why they've been going to be pieces. You're supposed to be able to
Do an #10 and just go to the one.
You just go, they're not big.
No.
You do one day-to-day operation advantage for that.
And there is one which says about Coromandel time, but I'm not sure who's put that one up. Don't think it was us.
That was in,
So-
at Coburg.
Yeah, so I was right, we got the designs, we got the locations, we took it out of this current financial year because of COVID and other reductions because of COVID, so it will be reintroduced into next financial year, which will then make it naturally a conversation for the LTP. Budget.
Okay, cool.
Right.
Early in August, we had a presentation to our community from the police, I mentioned this, it was sitting for 10, well over 100 people, and at night. And
1990.
well,
No, it's a different time.
we had them separated. And anyhow, so there's always concern about one thing. And people said it was happening every day in life, and it's major. And when those stats went up, what it really showed is our town, probably our district, is one of the very safest there is. And I know from Mercury Bay, it's not the safest in White, not the safest in White, and one of the safest in New Zealand. That was really good. So if you haven't had that presentation, I don't know if they went to every community, but it was very, very good because the stats they turned up with, it was like a map of your area, and then things happen. What we're really saying, if you go and look at every other place, you can't actually see the street names because of all the incidents. But you come around here, it's not that bad, and the great stuff, yes, they're on top of it, and so yeah, we hear one thing and see one thing. I've just got a lot of confidence that, there's another lot of people out there looking at this, and there'll be people walking around this town that are doing this job that you won't even know in the police force, but these are, very covert people. So that gave me great comfort. So if you get the opportunity to have them in your respective areas, that was well worthwhile. I also came out here for the Thames spatial plan, and it was a very, very useful exercise. The thing that drove home to me is there are some big issues coming our way.
Yeah.
So when we start talking about long-term plan, there are some things, about 3 of them, that stick out like organ stops. And some of us might have some pet projects, but we're going to have to forget about them because and this is suitable rise, coastal erosion, and how do we protect what we've got now. So I thought that was a very useful meeting, and one that I've taken on board, thinking and how I talk to people at home. We also had the same meeting with the connected journeys, which Rationale ran, and our one was well attended as well. And what it did say is that our big issue is how patent our roading networks are. And we've had that discussion as part of that is where do NZTAs sit on keeping the roads open, because a weather event closes the whole communities. Like for us, you can get the whole of Mercury Bay South shut off. You can go and get Tauro Power shut off. You can shut Willie Anna off. And you can't go anywhere. You can't get the airport, can't get the hospital, and you can't plan yourself go a day early. So it is a major problem, and so that was really good work. But again, the thing that came out to me is the data that these people are using is not accurate data. It is the best thing you get because it's at a high level.
Yeah.
But we aren't dealing with Thames-Coromandel District. We are dealing with independent communities that get affected by these events. So I have a meeting here with Mark Tamura, who's someone who knows from Whitehead Regional Council, looking after road transport, talking about issues. And so the issues, apart from the ones that he's already had, about one lane bridges, most things, is where do they sit in our road maintenance? Because what Rob has said, the cost to the trucking industry is 50%. The cost to us, we had an event the other day where the road was down. I was one car got affected. But at Casio, that was 5 of them. Now, some of these were Hiluxes, where the whole front suspensions were gone. Yeah. And others with blown tyres and smashed rims. Now, that's the cost on the individual or their insurance company for an unmaintained road. But above that is what is their plan for our roading and community resilience, because as soon as it goes up, the road network is not going to be fit for purpose, and we're going to have communities that go underwater or they're going to be drastically affected. And it's going to cost a lot of money. So for me, there's a bigger issue is how we and every other local authority represents themselves through local government New Zealand to say, how do you fund it? Because we heard the cost to look after sea inundation in Thames, part of Thames, the number is a horror story.
Yeah.
We will never fix it with 30,000 ratepayers. Never fix it. We just have to get waivers. Unless we get some help. Because it's not only Thames, it's the whole Bloom district. Like water and other things. So there's some serious things to be considered. And you know, when the political meetings fire up later this month, probably worth of asking a few questions to some people, because you've got some great ideas and whatever you're going to, how you're going to pay for it. Because simply we can't. So yeah, that's for me.
Okay, thank you, Tony.
I think you said enough to cover me too.
But you're not wrong. I just want to just add a couple of things. The policing. I'd just like to thank Terry, who stepped in and represented me at some of the police meetings. I have a remembrance of the awards services over at Hamilton, and Robin and Martin are going to the Remembrance Day service coming up. And I'd like to thank you for that, both for all of you, because it's really important if we attend some of those, they recognise that we actually care and take an interest, not just being there, when we let them know that we're there. And I think it makes a huge difference to how they respond back to us. And when we had the dedication of the Pacto Memorial seat up in Whitianga, I shouted about 9 or 10 of them breakfast, and just keeping that relationship. And on the 28th of this month, we've got the new area commander, Dean Anderson, being sworn in and welcomed on the Mataiwhitu Marae.
Oh.
So that's on the 28th of September. Lisa can give anyone that wants to go the details. But these sorts of things, developing that relationship, those things, sorts of things are really, really important. And we get some really good intel, and it keeps us up to speed with what's happening in all sorts of areas, which I won't go into in a public forum.
Will it be based in Pyro, then? Where will it be based in?
Not sure. That's currently where the sort of head is, but I'm not really sure. But the policing has modified, and everybody seems to be a lot happier in the police person, among the police personnel. They're working, they seem to feel like they've got it a bit more organised within the district. And so, you know, it's great. So, Tony, I'm really pleased to hear your feedback from that it's good. So, yeah, the hurricane was a great one, absolutely brilliant. I think Tony said it right about its importance to not just the district, but to the world.
Mm-hmm.
And the bomb, I think it fits quite well actually. It was launched at the same time as.
It's not a bomb.
It looks like a bomb.
It's a real one.
It just looks like some unexploded artifact.
Yeah.
And I love it. The reason why I love it is because it is controversial. No one can not have an opinion about that. I mean, I feel sort of like, oh my God, crap, I'm laughing. And then I thought, well, that's actually great. People are going to have an opinion, whether they like it or not, it doesn't matter. And it's got everybody talking. I think it's a fun thing to have.
And I think those people are another lot of people to be acknowledged in Thames, actually.
Yeah.
The public trust.
Paul Sylvester and Ron
Johnson.
Yeah. And you know, they just do it off their own back. Absolutely fantastic. And this is where things like the community services awards come in. So, I mean, it's great that we've got the money for Kopu, great that we've got the money for Sugarloaf. We've got Winston here on Saturday. We now have a time which is 1:30. So, I think it's awesome that we've got an opportunity to say thank you. Because,
Yeah, we just like in our community, one of the last real identities, Richard Simpson, passed away last couple of the night before. His funeral is on Saturday.
Oh, right, so you won't be here.
No, I couldn't, but now I'll fit him in the morning. I can be here at 6 o'clock at night, I couldn't be here.
Do you want a letter to go from the mayor?
I think it'd be quite nice because Richard and his family did a lot, Simpsons can all.
You've got to start on the fire brigade.
Yeah.
What relation is Scott to them?
Oh, it doesn't matter. Is it,
They're going to do a
it's,
lot of presentation on Saturday for 60 years.
is that?
You can still do one. If you, will the lodge do one? Because if you want to, I don't know, but the big community piece.
No, well, he's done a lot over the community. The Resco building in town, they did that for 6 weeks.
Did he get a community services there? You know, the middle, through the fire brigade, you want to give him one of those with the lodge?
I don't think it's appropriate now.
He has been active in the fire brigade all the way to the fishing club of Europe.
Yeah.
But he got a gold star.
He got a gold star.
You're going to say it.
He was a life member of the,
Okay.
and,
So we don't actually do that, acknowledge those that are formal in the
I
chamber.
think that it's quite useful to hear that kind of thing so that, yeah.
I'd actually quite like to acknowledge the formal. Because we've got so many.
Just to decide, because of COVID, they're taking from the fire station down, it was on the marina, the former marina too. It was on that committee, so they're taking down past the marina. I think they must be coming up, Blackfoot Lane, down past Smith Street and round to the campfire. And they're going to the funeral limited.
Yeah.
So they're doing quite a extensive public tour. to accommodate.
Give him his last ride. His last ride round the town.
That's quite big, actually. I remember they did that somewhere in the West Coast with white horses and a black carriage. And you've got 10 years. Okay, right. So
Can I ask just through the chair, who's coming to the COVID thing around the table?
anybody can come?
Yeah, I know, but these two, I wasn't planning to come, but I'll come if we got some, you need some more people there, so,
Oh, no, it's all right. It's
have you got enough?
You will be there. It's Saturday afternoon, I think, when he's.
about 1:30. We have a time, 1:30.
Well, yeah, I just wrote
Dash
that.
train for him, the dash train for him.
Round the back.
Tony smoking a no
I have a fire bucket with sand in it.
We'll try and walk him right down into the mud in his shiny shirt.
Actually, no, I'm just dragging out a cigarette smoking. God, no, that's just really.
That on his face, not.
No? Anyway, let's stop.
Okay, so I'll move reports we received. Seconded, Tony, all those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Rightio, so now we're moving into public excluded. Do I remember?
Yes.
Robert, seconded, Murray, any discussion, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried.